All right. So today we're going to dive in on the I'm going to say a generalized topic of marketing your services in
Mm,
the fitness, nutrition, just overarching health space, but we're probably going to take this a couple of different directions between the actual application of what you're promising, the business practice itself, the situational awareness and what you're actually creating for yourself by choosing to go down certain marketing paths. And I just this is a good one. This is probably gonna have an episode 200 as well as we go down this. So Brandon, Andrew, happy Monday, guys. It's good to see you.
mhm. Happy first day of the week. Happy first day of the week. So I believe you had some fun interactions here recently, Steve. Would you care to maybe lead off with that? I think a good story is a great catalyst.
A good story is a great catalyst. So the fun interaction is my Andrew knows if I call Andrew at like 8 p.m. or later, it's probably not just a hey, let's catch up call. It's definitely not. That's a I need help. I have a question about something that you know the answer to most likely, or you can give me opinion. Cause I'm usually like nose strip on, mouth tape on, like falling asleep at that point in time. But nonetheless, Saturday was one of those nights. So Jen, my wife, she is not a patient. Oof, almost gave him a lot of credit there. A client of a health coaching company, and they focus on the idea of functional. Now, before we go down that road real hard, and this is something that Andrew and I are probably like we agree a lot, but we also maybe disagree a little. And I'm going to let Andrew kind of go down the road. And Brandon, I'm actually really curious about your thoughts here, but I believe that we all need to be rooted in what we know to be true and things that have been proven before. When it comes to actually going around down the road of coaching, I think science is the way to do that. When it comes to things like business and marketing, well, we need to know you've been able to walk the walk before, right? So I believe that a majority of what you do, you need to focus on it being rooted in facts and truth. But I also believe that in order for us to grow and find new ways, you have to be willing to test the boundaries. Because as much as we as scientists, and I'll use that as a generalized term for business and coaching, um, try to be unbiased, I still think at the end of the day, no matter what, we're biased. There's a lot of different things that we can do to try to find and make sure that things don't go a random direction and that we have it with absolute truth. But the world changes and we have to test new theories. In order to test a new theory, we have to think of a new theory and we have to figure out if it's true. So the idea of functional, very specifically to me, is super intriguing because I think that is a group of people pushing the boundaries, trying to find new ways to help people and get them healthier, leveraging a lot of different things coming in. So, as I'm about to shit on functional, I do think functional is important. That said, when you give somebody who doesn't have a gallbladder and they have a literal disease that's diagnosed slash undiagnosed that with their arteries, that the negative of it is like a stroke or something to that side of things. You guys see my spoon? I bought a 2 foot wooden spoon for when I want to stir some shit up and have some conversations around things. So if you see the spoon pop up, that's how you know. Um, but when you're have an arterial disease, that the other side of something bad happening is like stroke, death, losing portions of kidneys, things like that. The person doesn't have a gallbladder, and then you prescribe a diet that is basically consuming a ton of fat. Both of you can teach me way more about this than I can teach you guys. But now we go down the road of consume a bunch of fat, see how this goes, and let's drive up ketones. I get it. I get it. I understand. Let's get rid of the dead cells and the senescent cells and all the things. Verbally, it all makes sense to me. But now we're talking about a weight that is kind of on the low side. Feels a little like we need to start to put some weight back on. We probably have a total fat poundage in the teens at this point in time. And oh, by the way, there's no gallbladder, which again helps with the processing and digestion of fat to some extent. And now ketones are driving high. I think when I called you, Andrew, it was like a 6.8. And we were told, like, oh, don't go above a 6. And it was like, all right, well, it's 8 p.m. What the fuck do you do if it goes above 6? Like, oh my God. And Andrew's like, all right. And I did a little other research, and there was a bunch of other symptoms and side effects. And you look at that, and it's like, all right, none of those things are happening. This is a guide. This is Google giving me some information, making sure it stays safe. So, not going to freak the fuck out. But hey, Andrew, what do you think? And Andrew was, without knowing all the details, here's kind of what I'm thinking. All right, great. So we established 7.5 is kind of that. Definitely don't go above there. Well, we woke up yesterday morning and we were at 7.4 with just super lethargic. It was like, all right, we're going to pull the plug here. We got to kind of back this down, and we need to like chill and just like, let's get some carbs back in here. Let's lower those ketones and let's just get some energy back. Cause we were literally in the middle of, we were on day 1 of a 3-day fast after going keto, like nothing except for water for 3 days going keto. I'm down. I'll do a 3-day water fast. I'm totally in. If there's a good reason for me to do it, I will 100% do it. But it just was one of those like, we're doing it, but like, where do we go? And what happens if we go out of like the boundaries that have set? And it's 9 p.m. on a Sunday night or Saturday night with no like, what the fuck do we do? So that's the kind of tee up of like, here we're at the marketing services, maybe what's going on, and then what happens, what somebody's inside your world and fulfilling on this promise that you made. So yeah, Brandon, do you think that this situation was good, bad, a lot of opportunity to improve? Again, I know there's some context missing because I don't have all the details.
Yeah, I was trying to. Yeah, I was trying to figure out what that context was. I'm surprised it got that far, but yeah, I guess so. The guy was saying, "Let's go water fast, let's go keto, and let's start seeing some results." What was the person's goal for purpose for doing that? I guess, or what was their
Million
The
dollar
intention that
question.
I understand is to burn more fat and kill off and kind of reduce the senescent cells and make the body more effective at burning fat for energy moving forward.
So it sounds like fat as a fuel source and autophagy. Brandon.
and that was why they did the water fast, was like, I guess, to clear the carbs or whatever, the impure foods in their system. Yeah, I'm not a fan. They're just doing enough with the water fast alone, because I already have my thoughts on water fasting as it is, having gone through one successful water cuts, but gone through 2 water fasts. But yeah, the fact that, it was so, whoever is recommending this is so adamant about going his way. Again, I have zero context of this, so I don't know if he was, how long this conversation was, how long they've known each other for, what kind of, what the client's background was and everything like that. But yeah, I think there's a time where, when that's where feedback is really important, because if you're seeing these ketone levels just keep on increasing, then, maybe a bad sign. I think there's a point where it's, trust the process comes, can be used a little bit too liberally, where it's like, no, we got data. It's not like, oh, I'm feeling a lot better, my ketones are shooting up and it's, it's working out. It was, unless they were really having some sort of positive experience from this. But yeah, I don't think that was the I think it's good to call Andrew. It's good to call Andrew. I think that was the right call. Did she sign a contract with this person? Because I would probably back up and, try someone else.
Yeah, I mean, they're in contract, but it's definitely not a long-term thing by any stretch. And I think it's one of those things. The trust the process, as you mentioned, is something that we've been doing for 6 months. And I will honestly say the first 4 or 5 months, I think the result that we can quantify has been fairly positive, honestly. And I even mentioned, like, this morning to Andrew, that Jen's her HRV and her recovery have been like at twice what she ever used to be. So historical HRVs would be in the 40s as measured by Whoop. On like her feeling really good days and high recovery days. On average, maybe in the high 30s, and after a day of not enough sleep or whatever and a lot of strain, she'd be down in the teens. Her HRV is pushing 90s, I think, with a recent high of 101. So using HRV as measured by Whoop as a measure of like, hey, how cardiovascularly kind of strong and things like that your body is, she's definitely been getting better, and she certainly hasn't been going out and doing any type of cardiovascular training in the sense of running and all those things. So with stuff like that and her energy and just a bunch of other signs that I'll say, things generally like are moving in a good direction. But I'm kind of like, are we hitting an absolute extreme at this point in time? And oh, by the way, when are we going to start packing on some pounds? Is kind of that point that we're at now. So 6 months, maybe 1 month's been weird, 5 months has been good, but we're hitting that point of like, yeah, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you know, when I got this call, and it's Steve and I usually play phone tag on the weekends. I'll call him, he'll be at something, he'll call me, I'll be doing something, and it's we by the time we finally got on the phone, it's like 9:30 at night. I'm like, this is very uncommon for was it a Saturday or a Sunday?
Saturday.
The Saturday night. So I'm like, all right, this is unusual. Um, so we start chatting, and again, I think that there's a time and place for everything. And at the end of the day, why we hire professionals is to manage risk, right? We want to improve our ability to achieve something. And we trust that our own judgment is inferior to someone that has been formally educated and trained. That's the whole basic premise of scope of practices. This is your lane because these are the things that you've been trained and educated in and you have experience in compared to the lay person. We then thus trust that you are a lower risk to the population and the people that you serve versus some schmuck down the street that's, working at Chipotle and is very experienced maybe with preparing food. However, again, maybe the prescriptive aspect of how that food functions in the body may be a little weird. So I will say that that's kind of the overarching theme that leads into functional medicine in general, which I mean, I definitely think that there's a place. And from what I understand, the premise of functional medicine is the holistic treatment of an individual in a way that supports their day-to-day function or their day-to-day activities of daily living, if you want to think about it like that. So athletes are going to have a different function versus general population that have desk jobs that are working a 9 to 5. And those are very important considerations when we're trying to find the appropriate professional for that specific set of circumstances and that goal that someone is dealing with. And I think that leads into our marketing thing that we mentioned earlier, and that there are a lot of professionals out there that are trying to find a unique opportunity to differentiate themselves as some kind of market segment, right? And I think that it really starts to get people into trouble because they're trying to find these new sexy names like hormone specialist, where in reality, they're really not, because I promise you the majority of people that have done the hormone specialist courses that I've actually tried to update and write even in the past probably couldn't give you heads nor tails of how the endocrine system itself specifically functions, especially in diseased or people like populations that have specific conditions like PCOS or, andropause or whatever it is. So when we consider that the overarching umbrella, minimize risk, right? And then we look at marketing, we see a lot of unique things that are starting to emerge from what are people trying to do. And this is where I think people really get in trouble because the individuals that are writing these courses and the organizations that are putting these out aren't necessarily formally educated. And in fact, they just hire someone that's done a course from someone else. And I know that there was one specific functional course that I took early on before I knew, and it ran me about $8,000. It allowed me to order labs, which is really laughable and like crazy to think about at this point, where I could look at and order a GI map test, I could order a dried urine test, and I would be at the mercy of the people that wrote the protocols and ultimately understanding how they would interpret them and their specific way of how they would ameliorate or basically help this person navigate those set of circumstances. And by the way, the testing kits themselves, because they would like, hey, you got to do all 5 tests. That would run you anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500. And then on the back end of that, these individuals that then also have to fork up another anywhere from the lowest I've ever seen was $300, all the way upward to $3,400 for all the supplementation necessary to reduce all these things that are going on from the GI pathogens. And it got really convoluted really quickly. So just a quick 60,000 foot overview of like a little bit of my experience and history with functional medicine and why I have a little bit of a disdain for people that aren't medical professionals or in the medical field calling themselves functional medicine anything. I think it's wildly inappropriate. And I think that it really does a disservice to the consumer. And it's something that we have to be, as professionals, very consistent with understanding. Hey, I understand that this might tip the sale. I understand that this is what this person is looking for. I am not that person. And so I think a lot of coaches these days really try to encapsulate and really try to capture so much market share because they're worried about getting another lead and they're trying to get another sale. And again, when they actually come time to deliver, they can't help this person navigate because they don't understand how it works at baseline. So now they're just running a protocol. And if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And the consumer's out a fuck ton of money and they have a really bad taste in their mouth from coaching. So with this condition specifically, I saw a couple different things. And again, like understand listeners that my background is as an exercise physiologist and my doctorate that I'm working on right now is in psychology. So I'm no by means like a functional person whatsoever. I've done a couple functional courses, blood chemistry, advanced testing, but I wouldn't really say that those are my bread and butter. So just a disclaimer with that. But when we look at like how nutrient composition gets broken down, we know that the gallbladder is very, very, very relevant for lipase and basically bile production and emulsification of fats and everything else. And so if you can't break them down because you're missing that, or you may need drastic amounts of supplementation to tolerate a tiny, tiny fraction of what you used to consume, putting someone on a fat heavy diet seems very inappropriate. And like if someone were licensed, they might lose their license for doing something that's negligible like that. If that person came in and was like, hey, reported them to the board because they had an adverse reaction to an intervention that was strongly encouraged, recommended, or prescribed. And that's where when we start looking at prescriptive, if we start saying, hey, here's your prescription, now that is something that's medically indicated. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like to use the word prescribe and inside of any context that's outside of exercise physiology, right? Because that's where you start to get into some of the legal ramifications of you're about to get smacked up and you have now no corporate veil of protecting yourself because they're like, well, what did you tell them to do? And you're like, this is what I told them. They're like, well, what's your training in that? And that's how board exams go and board reviews go. And you're sitting in front of these old people that are vastly experienced and they're just grilling the fuck out of you because you're like, oh God. Happens all the time in psychology where people that aren't formally trained in something do an assessment like a sexual assault assessment or something like that. And they're just a general psychologist. And now they come back and they're in front of the board because now the person has like trauma from having a bad, therapeutic experience. So all that to say, dietary fat wise, gallbladder stuff, ketoacidosis, like that would have been strike 3, 4, 5, and 6 for me. But having gone through and seeing and this is where I think when we talk about finding a good professional, there's so much that goes into that I'd love to throw back to you guys here in a second of how do you identify who to trust? And I think that this is really the theme in 2024 and beyond. So much information exists is how do we determine what the quality sources of information are? How do we know who to turn to? And we ask every speaker this of who are the people that you trust, and by proxy kind of expanding on that network. But at the end of the day, I think that the gallbladder thing and the ketoacidosis, given someone has a cardiovascular condition that causes hemorrhage and causes, like a lot of vascular complications, like I don't think that this person should be under the care of whoever they're being coached by. In fact, I think that it should be a collaborative effort, which when we think about building a referral network, that is the way that people are going to have the biggest impact and the most sustainable business model as a solopreneur in the coaching community is partnering with medical professionals, creating a strong referral network, and having that reciprocity of like, hey, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. Let me find someone that does. Let me get this client the best help so they can shorten how long it takes for them to navigate instead of the coach bumbling around for 12 to 18 months if the client sticks around that long. So that's my soapbox on that. I think it's a lot longer than what I anticipated. Steve pulled out the spoon, so he knew he would trigger me on that one. So
I knew where this was going to go. I knew where this was going to go.
I wouldn't report him. No, I would talk to him, but listen,
it's and so you asked the question, how do you know who to trust, right?
Yeah.
And I think my first answer is I don't know. That's a hard one because there's a lot of there's a lot of things that exist. And even over the past 3 to 4 years, how many institutions and educations
Mhm.
and academies and all the things got born out of people being stuck at their computers, still trying to
Mhm.
find a way to make money. Here's a thing to go do that I once did and it worked for me perfectly because et cetera, under my very specific set of circumstances. And I'm going to
Mhm.
sell it to you to go and create the thing. And the hard reality is the thing that they sold you probably worked. I believe 60 to 70% of things that you can buy online worked for that person in the circumstances and situation that they had. The problem is, and this is something that I continually strive to get better at, is the relaying of the specific set of circumstances that did exist. Because I'm sure there is, in one case, somebody without a gallbladder that poorly burned fat that they needed to do this thing. And after they went through this protocol, they were feeling way better. It probably did exist. Or the business in general, or just the generalized statement of what we're talking about. Those things are what isn't there, and that's where, as we've continued to talk, I like to teach on the idea of, hey, I'm teaching you the principle of something. And then here's also a strategy and a tactic that you can use and leverage that principle. But know that that principle can be used in other situations as well, because maybe in this one specific instance, it doesn't make sense for you, or it's not going to work, or your business, it's not something that'll call it pertain to. So that's something I've developed by just being a part of this industry and being around people like both of you who are more institutional education side of the world. We're like, oh yeah, I can go out and teach it and tell you to do a thing, but if I tell you to do a thing, did you actually learn something, or did you now take something away that you can just use, but you have no idea how to modify it or how and when to apply it specifically? So long rant of, I don't I don't know the best way depending upon the topic that we're talking about. When it comes to health related stuff, there's going to be a list and a board and a bunch of literal certifications and accreditations that you can go to. I am not going to try to tell you any of those letters and numbers and institutions, because that's not me. When it comes to maybe more of the business side of the house and the marketing side of the house, I think the thing you need to understand is, what are they telling you? And is it truly realistic? There's a couple of times where I've seen ads uh online. And I actually think I'm going to go down the road of just doing some green screen on Instagram of breaking down these ads and like, is this realistic? And here's all the things you don't know. And there's also there's an unsaid marketing strategy slash principle behind it. If anybody remembers some of the original Viagra commercials, one of the cautions to it, or one of the issues, was if your erection lasts too long, to then go seek medical help. Now, on one hand, that is a literal warning. If this stays there for too long, then you probably need to go seek medical help. But what do you think every single guy thought? Oh, I'd love for that to be there for hours and just go, right? Like, very, very realistically. So the underlying tone is, oh, hey, buy this program. Warning, may cause excessive zeros in your bank account. Buy this health coaching thing. Warning, might cause multiple people to say you look hot. Like, there is the warning, right? Or the joke. Oh, they didn't tell you had to go spend all this money on clothes. Warning, will have to buy an entirely new wardrobe. It's tongue in cheek. In Viagra's case, it was serious, but the leverage there is, oh, the warning doesn't sound so bad. I kind of want that thing. So when we think about the idea of the warning, or just what they're telling you in general, if it's too good to be true, break that down for a moment. Like, hey, I can lose 40 pounds in a month. And recently I saw somebody put that out there in the coaching space, and they were actually making fun of the ad. So we're on the right side of this. But it's, you're going to lose 40 pounds in 1 month. And it's like, all right, let's pull back for a moment. Ask the question, if this was real, this was actual factual real shit. Why isn't everybody doing it? Just ask that surface level question, because the only guaranteed way for you to lose 40 pounds in under a month, like absolute guaranteed way, because I would be willing to bet literally not eating for 4 straight weeks might not even produce that result. For it definitely won't for some people if you don't even have that much weight to lose. But like for me, if I didn't eat for a full month, 40 pounds I still think would be a big stretch. A big stretch. But you know what's going to suck on the other side of that? Whatever weight I lost isn't going to be the weight that I want to lose. I'm going to be miserable and everything else in between. Now, I know that I get to hang out with, again, you guys. But if you don't know the wiser, the only other way that I can confidently tell you that I'm going to carve off 40 pounds of your body in a month is to literally carve off 40 pounds of body from you and just like go down that road. Why wouldn't everybody be doing it? So that's my throw out there. But Brandon, I'm sure you got some. Yeah, this is actually a real place to go and look and see if they're certified, and they should have these credentials. And Andrew, I'm sure you got some as well. So Brandon, in the coaching side of things, how do we know if this is a person that's realistic? What does the accreditation thing look like? What does that even mean? Maybe because a lot of people probably don't even know like what these things truly mean, other than, yeah, I'm certified by some company that sent me a piece of paper. Because I've worked for a company before where you go through their $1,200 course, you get a piece of paper that says you passed their stuff. But after you go through their stuff, you might have a little things left to be desired. So who knows? But they're a recognized name. They seem trustworthy. They tell you all the right things. So, Brandon.
Yeah, and I think that it comes with the due diligence, I think, on the consumer as well, where, maybe, you may be the target demographic for someone where you're in a spot financially and, you're like, oh, $1,500, I'll throw that over to someone, but I don't think in the general population is at a point right now where, hey, this person can get me X results, whether that be financially or whether that be fitness wise or whatever it might be, is able to do that. And so I really think, yeah, doing your due diligence, making sure that you are not, and I don't want to say like a background check, but that's where it's also really important for you as the seller, the person delivering these services, to what are they? I'm blanking on testimonials. I think that's going to be a really good way to allow yourself to be held to the standards that you are, to become trustworthy, I should say. Because I mean, for me too, I'm a big skeptic when it comes to anything that sounds too good to be true. I've been around too many multi-level marketing people to, I've learned. I've been around them services and those products, but yeah, and that's where they're promising like, hey, you recruit 2 people, you'll get a car eventually. It's like, yeah, that sounds a little too good to be true. Do you know how much cars cost these days? The hard part is I have seen it, so it's like it works for like 95 or like 5% of the population. Anyway, doing your due diligence, though, I think before you just hit buy, just do a little quick Google search. Just see what comes up. If it's a coach, hopefully they have some sort of reputable website. Hopefully they have some testimonials. Do some digging. Look at their Instagram. See what people have said. Reddit, depending on how big they are. If you type in, some coach that may be like super big, first name, last name, coaching, Reddit, you'll get some results, hopefully, if they're pretty well-known or well-known in a good way or bad way. So I do a lot of research on Reddit when it comes to products and services. And I get skeptical if it's like, okay, this person's a little less, isn't talked about as much online, but this person's claiming that they have this big following. They have this big, secret that they're able to do to get you from point A to point Z. But if it, again, what Steve was saying, if it really worked and it was as great as it was, why aren't you more well known? And then 2, why is it kind of seem sketchy? Why does it just seem like there's a lot of like snake oil kind of going around? And I think there's a responsibility on both parties, and even the person delivering the services. Being transparent with your claims will allow, I think, just for the whole entire industry, whatever it may be, to not have that rep, especially with coaching. I think I hear a lot of, I'll hear it's like 50% of people say, I had a really bad experience with my coaches, and the other half will be like, I had a really good experience with my coaches. And I think it's just time for the clients looking, we need to be, I say we, because I look for services, I look for products, I'm a client, or I'm a customer. Do your due diligence, take 10, 20, 30 minutes to look and see what do those letters mean behind someone's names? Are they made up? Because I've seen that. It comes for, I'll speak on nutrition, and I guess fitness. It's really easy to get like a personal training certification. So if you're wanting to become a personal trainer, maybe they have NASM, behind their names. Okay, great. Let's also check their track or their history with their clients. Do they have the certification? Have they gotten results? Okay, cool. This person seems reputable. But I've seen some trainers that have multiple training or certifications and nutrition certifications, and you look at their page or whatever it may be, and there's no results. So they got the piece of paper, but were they able to apply what they learned to their clients to get real results, or is it all just book knowledge and they don't necessarily know what to do with that knowledge? But especially with nutrition, it gets really gray. I know even right now there's a lot of talks between like nutrition coaching and dietetics and dietitians right now. There's a big lawsuit that happened a couple years ago in Florida, where it was like, where's the line between what kind of what kind of services and nutrition advice are you allowed to give as a coach versus a dietitian and all that. And even myself right now, I'm still even like, I'm not really entirely sure where that line is drawn, which is something I do hope to learn about. It's also hard because it's state by state. States will have different rules. And then if you're doing some online stuff, it's even harder to cross states by states depending on the state. So it's hard. The system's not set up for people to be successful, unfortunately. But I think, really be cautious of where you're going for your advice and where you're going to spend your money, because money's it's a little tighter now, and just be smart. I don't think if the biggest takeaway I think from all of this is if there's a too good to be true statement, like you'll lose 40 pounds in a month. I'm like, are we getting my leg cut off? Like, that's a quick way to do that. But if it sounds too good to be true, it really is too good to be true. I've signed up for a handful of stuff, not expensive stuff either. And even then I'm like, nah, it didn't work out. So just be careful. Just be careful out there, because I think there's a lot of
It didn't work because you didn't do the work.
Yeah. Well, that's
a lot of that.
You suck.
Yeah, that's the emotional way. Yeah, like take responsibility. Take responsibility for yourself. Take ownership.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, there's multiple stakeholders that are involved in this. One, you have to be a savvy consumer. If you get got, that was getting on you for getting got. There's also the nature of being an ethical business person and selling what you can fulfill on. And there's also the coach, right? So the business owner and the coach, I kind of segregate. So business, coach, and client, and the coach has to have the competency necessary to navigate that. And competency is a function of education and experience. But, I guess here are the 4 things that you need to know as a consumer in 2024. Brandon let it off well. Demonstration assets. Have you been there? Have you done it? Can you repeat it? Not every coach is going to put demonstration assets on their social media feed. So take that with a grain of salt. If they don't have that, it doesn't completely disqualify them. It just moves on to the next thing. And so the second way that you can tell if a coach is a quality coach is that they will acknowledge when they don't know something. If you want to know that someone is a rookie coach, they're very green, they will pretend like they have an answer for everything. And in fact, if you throw in some highly nuanced thing and they don't miss a beat and they just go back into an answer, chances are good that they are going to be inexperienced, because every good professional is going to be like, well, I don't really know. Here's what I do know. In which case, then that leads us into the third thing that you can do to determine if someone's a quality professional in 2024 that's worth you hiring and spending money on, is you ask them some probing questions around information you already know about your own condition, right? So if you're trying to lose weight and you've done the Ozempic thing and you know that it inhibits gut motility, maybe you ask them like, hey, I'm considering weight loss drugs. Do you know what the effects of that might be? And they're like, no, it's great. Let's try it. Right. Well, already you have this nugget of truth. And this is how people would ultimately determine back in the day whether someone's a reliable source of information from a spy perspective, is that they would feed them some information, see how they responded, and then be like, okay, I can trust this person. They're probably reliable or they're not. So you could ask them, hey, what are your thoughts on the keto diet? What are some of the limitations? What are some of the ramifications if it goes poorly? And if they can't articulate that, and they don't know the risks, and basically they're not a human warning label for the interventions that they could potentially suggest, discard, right? Not like they're a card game, but discard. And then the last thing you need to know when you're trying to find a quality professional in 2024 is they need to be able to acknowledge what the limitations of their perspective and their interventions are. When is this not likely to work? When is this likely to work? And if they can't answer those two questions, that means they're biased and they're blind to their bias, which makes them dangerous, right? That's a level of ignorance, especially when you're playing around with people's physiology for a long term. And you're like, hey, you don't have a gallbladder. We're going to put you on a high fat diet. Like, who put you in charge, bro? Get out of here. Right. So those are just some of the things that I think people need to be aware of. And if you don't, you're not a sophisticated consumer. And that's a hard reality. So go do a little bit of homework, find out a little bit about the problem that you're trying to solve. So that way you can come to the table with things that your coach or your prospective coach can potentially help you unearth and uncover during the consultation. And that's my TED Talk.
I'm going to disagree with one of your points that you made there.
Oh, hit me.
My thing works 100% of the time, 10% of the time, always.
That's important.
I'm just all the time. There are situationally speaking, never a time where it doesn't work. So I'm not sure what you're talking about.
It was a long road from rice and sweet potatoes, so I look forward to this one as well.
Brandon, you see him get all like, oh, here we go.
He about to say some shit. But yeah, I mean, we're butting up 10 minutes after, so you guys want to close this out before I go open up on a fucking scope of practice rant? Because I got one loaded right now. Business specifically.
I mean,
frameworks.
It feels appropriate. If it's on our mind, we should just get it out there.
You said we're gonna have multiple parts of this.
Yeah. I mean, let's just rock and roll though. No, you don't want to. Scared.
I haven't gathered my thoughts on it yet, and they're all over the place. But generally speaking, again, if you don't know how it works, then you can't understand when it's broken, which means that you're running a blind play. And I don't know about you, but I don't like driving at night with my headlights out. That seems like a really dumb idea. And if I have to have someone sit in the passenger seat with a mag light to be my flashlight, and then the moment they get out of the car, there's no longer a flashlight, I probably wouldn't buy that fucking car. Nor would I sell my car to pay for a $25,000 business coaching program only to have a massive amount of failure with that.
It's a whole episode. It's another episode.
But they do run some really good ads. And very specifically.
There was a lot of success in that program. I would say there was just as much, or actually, if not, a greater amount of failure in that program. And so, it's really unfortunate to think that, and this is why I think data comes back into, and I think a lot of people, and to everyone, like everyone gets a learning curve, right? I think that the longer the industry's been around, the less of a learning curve you deserve, because you should then be going and trying to get ahead and reduce the amount of time it takes for you to learn how to be effective and efficient and navigate that stuff well. And so, I think that it was a travesty that there was data collected and it was never leveraged. And despite, kind of being like, hey, this is probably what needs to happen, it was always just kind of like, does it? And no change ever occurred, which I think is a function of a poorly run coaching program, is that there's feedback that's coming up and there's no interventions that are evolving from it. And so again, no fault to anyone's own, because there wasn't any idea on how to navigate those early couple years. But I would say by year 3, with the given data sets that emerged and like the potential interventions we could have implemented, I think that it's at some point you just got to do better. You just got to
Be
do better.
better. Be better.
You just got to do
All
better.
right.
So
Well,
yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
appreciate the input. It's been an interesting 48 hours of like, all right, here's this thing they say they can help, but
Yeah.
do they really believe they can help based upon a couple of things that I know with not being an expert in here going against some of those points that I have, kind of as you mentioned there, Andrew. It's again, I don't want to erode away at the 5 months of things that seem to be helping,
Yeah.
but all of a sudden in 2 days it seems to be eroding away 5 months worth of good positive effort. So maybe a cautionary tale for those of you out there looking to coach other people. And this, I think, as we grow and build Beyond the Pump, as we look to help coaches, as we
hmm
look to coach people, this is something that we take very seriously, and that we hope you do as well. We
hmm
don't expect you to have every answer, kind of as you mentioned, Andrew, because we certainly don't. But if it's worth exploring, I can guarantee you we will go explore it and find the answer. We will
hmm
learn the answer and then be able to talk about it moving forward.
hmm
Sometimes it won't be worth exploring, though, either, because the rate of occurrence or the impact or potential impact that it's having just doesn't warrant it. Which doesn't mean it's not important to you, right? So that's just throw that out there. We just might not go down that road, but nonetheless, continuing to learn and continuing to be really good at what you can control and the things that you want to impact is going to be important.
hmm
But don't go bullshit people. Don't
Yeah.
go out there and do and put things out there that you're not 100% positive on. Don't, if you're going to go make some serious claims or have people go through some seriously impactful things, in this case, keto and not eating for 3 days, make sure you remember all of the important pieces. I might love Facebook ads for your business, 100%. If you are flat broke, I'm not going to go tell you to do it, though, simply because you shouldn't be doing it.
hmm
But they might help. Just you can't afford them right now, because
Yeah,
that's
and
just the way it is.
risk, right? Because that's where it's like it could, but the risk of that not working is substantially greater because of lack of experience or lack of demonstration assets or whatever it is.
Yep.
But if I could plug something, I mean, like, obviously we're Beyond the Pump and we have our own academy and university and AITQP. We haven't settled on a name on it. It's just a long string of letters at this point, but we are building something that should be a very great general cornerstone for people in the health industry, whether they're allied health professionals, whether they're people that are seeking to build a coaching business. It really does require that you understand how the body works and how to implement fitness, nutrition, and relationship building interventions inside of what it means to have a successful, fulfilling business, and also how to build an ethical business. So those are really the cornerstone items that we're building into our integrative health coaching certification course. Eventually, that will be board certified in the next 12 to 18 months. So if you are looking for that, we're going to offer it. So, if you do trust us, we're happy to serve you. And if you have anything that you do want us to dive into, we're happy to look into it as well.
And that wraps up another episode. Everybody have a fantastic day. We'll be back soon for part 2, where we're going to dissect some marketing and business practices.